Hello, good morning, everybody. I think I unmuted myself. Good morning. Alrighty, we're gonna get started because there is so much to cover and I don't want to waste one single second. So let's get this started. Welcome to Scale Your Private Practice, Setting the Foundation for Growth. Facilitated by me, Monique Castro, and I'll share a little bit more about myself in the upcoming slides. A few things that I wanted to go over initially is that this session will be recorded and it will be accessible afterwards to anyone who registered. And it's going to be placed on an online platform where you're going to have a special link and login, and you'll get access to the information there. It will include the slides and also any type of resources or information. It'll all be centralized there. So my hope is to have that up on the platform by Monday, no later than Tuesday. But you'll definitely have that as soon as possible. I am going to go over a lot of information. It will get really complex. So what I want to request everyone to do is to write down your questions or note things that kind of like are popping up for you that you want to circle back on. And we're going to have time to answer questions throughout. The chat is also a great place to put the questions. I might not get to them immediately, but we're going to have sections throughout. I believe there's a total of 5 areas where I'm going to pause and we have an opportunity to talk about it, discuss it, answer any questions. Because I will be sharing a resource document after everything, there's going to be things I will talk about and share, and I won't go into specific details about them, but they're like resources, right? Like different, if you need a CPA, like here's who I recommend. If you need bookkeeping, here's who I recommend. These are the systems that I use. I will give you that information and I might just like share it here, but the more detailed kind of like links and where to find it, you'll have access to that. Initially, when I was going to do this workshop, I wanted to do all the content at the beginning, an hour and like 30 minutes of content, and then do the last part of it, questions. But then I did a run through and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of information to digest, a lot of to go over. And I feel like the better way to do it is actually for us to stop and pause, to have an opportunity to check in, see what's landing, see what questions you have as we go. So that's the format that we're going to go in. And so actually everyone who registered will have access to the Q&A because it's going to be happening throughout. So you'll be able to reference everything from today there. We will have a 5-minute break about 11 o'clock. I would say about 10:55 or so, 5-minute break. Of course, tend to your needs as we go. If you need to get up, you need to get off screen, anything you need, just please take care of yourself. But we will have a dedicated 5-minute break. And I already mentioned that I'll be sharing a resource document with all the helpful information. And then I'll also note down any things that is coming up and there's questions around, maybe a resource I hadn't thought about that I can also add, and I'll note that down as we go along. So again, the chat will be a great place to, ask questions. So a little bit about me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Monique Castro. I'm a citizen of the Navajo Nation and Mexican, born and raised in Los Angeles, in Tongva territory, specifically in Lincoln Heights, which is the northeast area of Los Angeles. I am a mom, and I'm actually a mom of a beautiful baby boy. He's 1.5 years old. I'm also a stepmom, so we have a blended family. I'm a wife, I'm an auntie, and the oldest sister of 4. I'm a first-generation high school grad and first for everything afterwards. College graduate, graduate graduate, business owner, so forth. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and a certified professional coach, and a multi-business owner. So I own a group practice, which is Indigenous Circle of Wellness. And then I also have a coaching and consulting business, which I will share about throughout, about how does that work? How do they complement each other? Why are they separated? I know people have a lot of questions around that, maybe for their own, what kind of business look like? And that's also part of scaling. And I also am a co-founder of 2 nonprofit organizations, and I could speak to that as well. So a disclaimer, the information here is definitely for educational and informational purposes. This is not legal or financial advice. You absolutely want to connect with attorneys and CPAs and all of that when it comes to these areas that are very specific. I will share how maybe I'm doing it, some things that have worked for me. Folks might even share things that have worked for them, but everybody's situation and business is very unique and different, whether that's the population you serve, your license, and or what state you're in. Okay. So our agenda today, we're going to be going over kind of three main areas. And one is, what is your vision for scaling? So we're going to take a little bit of time to think about what is your vision, because what your vision is or what your plans are, your goals are, that's kind of where you're going to see throughout the presentation and the workshop, like, okay, that's something I'm going to focus on, or I need to get stronger in, I need to add this, so forth. I am going to take a little bit of the first, well, pretty much the first half is going to be reviewing what your vision is, thinking about that, as well as the foundation. So what are the essentials? These are the things that you should already either have or be really working on to have a successful business. And then the growth is what will be the second part of it. And we'll really dive into like, what are like also the foundational things you need to scale a business for longevity and sustainability. So I like to use a lot of, I talk a lot in the sense I use metaphors, I use different like examples. I like to share stories. And for this, I was thinking about the soil, right? When we think of a foundation, thinking about the soil that is going to help our garden grow. And the soil is really important, making sure that all the nutrients are there. And also soil is different and for different types of gardens, right? So if anyone here does any type of gardening at all, or even just familiar with just how plants and plants grow and gardens are, is that soil, it changes depending on the type of plant or what you're working with. And that's the same thing with us, is that it's really unique to what we're planting, what we want, what we're offering. And then of course, like how you tending and sustaining that garden. And just like gardens, there are seasons, right? There are seasons when there's a lot of growth, and there's some times where it's more dormant or you're focusing on other things, because that is where you're at in the season of your business. So business is very fluid, it changes, and we are, as business owners, will learn, if you haven't already, a lot of flexibility and adaptation. So scaling your business, what and how you grow is completely up to you. So I put some pictures here of sunflowers. So sunflowers grow up, right? They grow up, they grow tall, and at the top there's this beautiful sunflower, right? And you look up to it, it's bright, it doesn't necessarily need a lot of other sunflowers around it. It can kind of grow on its own, and maybe a few around. It could pretty much exist in that way. And the way I want to see this is that growth can go up in this way as well. It can be about visibility. It could be the income. It can be, maybe it's your own personal visibility. Maybe it's the practice or your business visibility. But that's one way. It doesn't necessarily grow wide, right? So I want us to think about growth and scaling as something that can look and be anything we want it to be. Okay. Sometimes we might assume that business growth is, okay, well, we started sometimes it's measured by income. We started at this in year one, and now we want to get to this income. And that could be it. And that's totally fine. But sometimes it's like, actually, I want to be more visible in the spaces that I want to speak to, of the community that I want to receive the information and knowledge that I have. Okay, so that's one way. Another way is I put tomatoes here. And with tomatoes, and particularly the little cherry tomatoes, is that it doesn't need also a lot of space. And it can grow just like in a small area, and there's a lot of it, a lot of little tomatoes, right? Like, so this can think of this as like a lot of different offerings. It could be that you're servicing a lot of people. The reach that you have is like a lot, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to go out of an area. So an example can be like, we're in Los Angeles, like there's a lot of people in Los Angeles. I might, as a business, decide we're not going to serve outside of Los Angeles County. We're only going to service Los Angeles County, and we're going to focus just on Los Angeles County. Um, Another visual I wanted to share is like pumpkins, how pumpkins grow. Pumpkins grow, they have long vines and they take up a lot of space. Like you need big fields for a pumpkin. But the amount of pumpkins you get, sometimes there's like one, sometimes there's like 10 on a vine. It really just depends. And I would see this as more as like, how are you spreading out? Is it more about how you're spreading and covering more land as a service provider or in your business? Are you trying to reach more people? Is that where your community is at? And that you provide a service that might be more specific, right? And it can be all the things. It can be that you're servicing one area in this way, servicing another area in this way. The main thing is that it's totally up to you. And I will also say in my own experience of business growth and how scaling has happened has been that it's just there's been seasons where we've done larger expansions of as far as locations. We've had where we've really focused on particularly during the pandemic on like servicing more people, right? And so we've kind of gone through many of these, and sometimes it's all of it. But the main takeaway here is that it's up to you. If you want to work 2 days a week, that's up to you. If you want to work 7 days a week, that's up to you. Scaling is what you choose it to be. So just keep that at the forefront. So business foundation is going to be the first part that we go into. And these are the things that I would say if you are a solo business owner or a small group business owner, these are some like essential things you either should already have established or consider having, because they will, this is what you're going to need in order to move anything beyond where you're at. So one is, what product or services do you offer or plan to offer? There has to be at least one main product or service that is like your central service. And then you can have add-ons or things that complement that, but what is your main service? Everything will really go around that service or product. And I say product because yes, we can have services, but we might also have, some folks have actual products like journals or therapy card decks. They might have other things that are part of the work that they do that may or may not be within the same business entity. And we'll talk more about that later. So what is the service or product that you offer? You need to know that, because this is going to determine what type of business entity you will need to establish. So as a professional service provider, putting my hat on as a therapist, a licensed therapist in the state of California, the business entity that I need to have is a professional corporation. That is an essential part. I cannot have an LLC. My private practice cannot be an LLC. It has to be in the state of California, a professional corporation taxed as an S corp. Okay, so this is where it's important. What is your service? What are you using in that? Now, on my other hat, I'm a coach and consultant, and I'm only focused on coaching and consulting on that in this hat. I decided to have it as an LLC. That was a choice that I made. I could have had it as an S corp taxation, but I decided I wanted to have it as an LLC. And we'll talk about the differences between the different types of business formations in a bit. But what you offer really determines on how you're able to set up your business entity. Okay, whether you're a professional service or offer any other type of service. Truck drivers have to have certain regulations. So do therapists, lawyers, chiropractors, whatever the case might be. We all have to really remember that the business entity is really based off what we are providing. The next is your business name. Now, a business name can be as simple as like, I like this name, I want to go with it, but there's so much more to it with the business name you want to consider. And one of them, the main thing I want to hone in here is that your business name really has to be aligned with your state and board requirements. Okay. You also want to do a business name search with your state. So before you decide on the business name and do any type of branding and all of that, is like, does this business name does someone already have it? You can look that up online. I will share resources on where to look all this up. And then the national name search as well through the US National Trademark Search to see, does anyone nationally have this name? Is it already taken? Okay. So business formations. I'm going to speak to first professional services. Okay, and then I'll speak to other business formations for anything like products or services that are not necessarily professional services. So professional services, meaning you have to have a license or specialized certification to offer it. So business formations are the type of business entities that the IRS have. So some things are standard across like the US and some things are very state specific. What I highlighted in turquoise color is in the state of California, particularly the state of California, these are the business formations that are allowable. You can be a sole proprietor. You can have a professional corporation as an S corp or a nonprofit. Those are the ways in which you can form a business in California. There's other states such as Arizona and actually a large number of other states that they have what they call professional limited liability corporation. So it's a PLLC. So if you're in a state, that might be what you're allowed to do. In California, they do not allow that. We have to be a professional corporation. There's often questions about what is an S Corp and a C Corp. So I'm going to give an example of that. An S Corp would be like Indigenous Circle Wellness is an S Corp, a small business, right? It's kind of like the mom and pop businesses, the like one-off businesses, small businesses that are around. Small meaning that there's less than 100 shareholders. It's not like super big. A C Corp is a large national business. They can do international business. An example, this would be like Walmart, McDonald's, Starbucks. Those would all be considered C Corps. And then professional limited liability is pretty much kind of like a professional corporation, but it's an LLC with the professional part in front of it. And then the LLC, we're not allowed to have that in California by itself for professional services. What I also want to kind of really address here and emphasize is that in the bracket, the orange bracket, any of these business formations will protect your personal assets because they're considered a completely separate entity from yourself. Whereas a sole proprietor, you are the business and you can't have employees, you can't have like, there's no shareholders, there's no partners, it's just you, yourself, and that's it, right? And there's no protection. You are the business is you, there's no separation. For protection of personal assets, you know, hopefully no one ever sues you, but if they did, they would sue the business, not you. I mean, they technically could still sue you, but this is where we make sure things are done properly. But this is for a lot of like protection. It also keeps assets separate. So the business has its own assets, and then you have your assets as an individual person. Let me see. See if there's anything here that I want to kind of address. I'm sure we'll have questions about this. Now, when we talk about tax elections are pretty much how a business is taxed. So for example, the overarching, I'm going to give the example of a nonprofit. A nonprofit is like the overarching business formation, but under the nonprofit, you can be taxed in different ways. You can be a 501c3, you can be a 501c4. There's different tax selections. You can have multiple different tax selections for a particular nonprofit. I'm currently an LLC single owner for my coaching and consulting business. And last year I didn't really work in the business, so I didn't have a lot of revenue. So I'm filing the taxes as a sole proprietor for that. So it's not separate from my my personal taxes. But in the upcoming year, I will have a S Corp tax election for my LLC. Okay. So there's like the business formation and then there's tax selection. So S Corp is a type of tax selection under the corporation heading. Okay, so I'll pause there and just see if there's any questions so far on what I've shared. You can use the chat, you can unmute yourself.
Does how much you make depends how you're gonna file taxes?
Yes. So for the LLC, it will depend on how much revenue I bring in and how I would file the taxes.
What about an S Corp?
For an S Corp, so everything is going to really be dependent on, so the way the S Corp, the way you file taxes is going to be the same, but how much you make is going to depend on how much you will or will not owe to the IRS for the revenue that you receive. So there's like a percentage where you're able to have a positive revenue, but say it didn't go over a certain threshold, then you wouldn't have to necessarily pay taxes on that amount.
Do you think it's a good idea to start as a nonprofit?
It depends on the goal and the reason for the nonprofit. So like, what is the vision of your business? What is the mission of your business is really going to depend if a nonprofit is the better route or the right route for you. A lot of the business part of it, though, that we're going to go over is across the board. The way that things are taxed are very different per business entity. And also the way that the ownership works. So like an S corporation and how I own that and what I can do with that business is very different than what I can do with a nonprofit. There's limitations and advantages on all of them. So this is where the business planning part, and we'll talk more about business planning in a bit, is so essential because depending on what your overall goal is, one entity might make more sense than another, depending on what you're planning to offer. And then of course, maybe you have a very, very big vision. I'm a very big vision person. So like, that is why I co-founded 2 nonprofit organizations, because one of them, it was like, one organization was, it was like a spare of the moment, like we should do this. And I was like, I'm down, let's go, right? Another one was like, this is a complimentary service that we can't meet in this business, but in the nonprofit could meet the needs of the community in a different way, in a more meaningful way than I ever could as a small business owner, right? A nonprofit was able to do that. So we have a sister organization that's a nonprofit. So there's different ways to do it. But your entry point, like what is your main focus first, it might change. And it could be a nonprofit and it might not be. So we can definitely talk more about that. Lena.
I was going to say, like, this stuff is still very confusing, which is fine, because I think it takes a while to kind of get it. I recently also started my business part of it, and this is going to be my first year doing taxes. And I shopped around for different CPAs that were going to be really helpful in answering a lot of those first time owner questions and stuff, because I feel really inept, in it, right? Like I know nothing. And so, I could definitely put that in the chat, like the person that I went with, but they're very helpful, very thorough, and pretty much will hold your hand through it and kind of answer different questions and let you know why something is the way that it is. And I'm starting to get it a little bit, my mind just isn't primed to like businessy type of stuff, but I'm, trying to get there. And so, even though it'll be confusing, I think like finding people that can guide you through it in a way that you can like understand is going to be really helpful.
Absolutely. And please share that CPA's information. It's a game changer when you have a really awesome CPA. The CPA I started off with, she was great for the startup of the business, but on the ongoing need and support, I didn't feel like my questions were getting answered. So I changed, and I have an incredible one now, and it makes a huge difference. So any resources that folks have, please share them. We definitely want to make sure that we circulate good referrals. Jesus.
Hi, good morning. And thank you, Monique. First of all, I really, really, really appreciate your work and the way you share it, and just grateful to be here. I had a question, and I've heard multiple things around this. So I was curious, like your thoughts regarding like consulting and training under like a therapy business, when it is related to mental health and wellness, and some folks have, more suggested if you're doing trainings and consulting, that should be a separate business to like the therapy services. And then I've heard other folks say like, if it's interrelated with the core therapy work and mental health related, then perfectly fine. Even with like this thing with coaching, like, for example, some folks have come to me and they've wanted coaching on how to integrate like indigenous wellness to mental health. And so I do see that as related, but I've heard some people saying, no, you should really keep that separate. So I know it's like complex, but I'm curious, like your thoughts around like the services part.
Yes, so as long as they're interrelated, you're fine. Now there's people have preferences, sure, but legally, as long as they're interrelated, you're fine. And so that's a great example of like coaching and consulting, right? And I see that question there. Would you say consulting is the same as coaching? Not necessarily. It can be, it could be like, it's kind of, they're two different kind of modalities and ways in which you serve someone, but you might have like start like a session or an appointment with some consulting at the beginning and then some coaching on how to move something through towards the end of that appointment. Like that's one way to kind of like have them both at the same time. But as so long as it's related, right? So we do workshops and trainings. All of our workshops and trainings through Indigenous Circle of Wellness are all mental health and wellness related. That is our overarching service, mental health and wellness. So as long as whatever workshops and trainings that we're doing falls under that umbrella, we are good to go, right? The same thing with coaching and consulting. If the coaching and consulting is along those lines, then we are good to go. Now, because I also have different expertises in different areas and passions, I would need to make sure that based on the relationship that I'm having with someone is like a coaching or consulting client, like, is it now not falling under that? I'll give you an example. Me and my husband own a duplex property, right? We eventually want to have an LLC for our property. I have a background in being in apartment management. So I know a lot about housing laws. I know a lot about also we've been rent owners and also a landlord for a long time. So someone might ask me a question about that in the middle of a question and like a conversation, not a big deal. But if they're asking me like more consultation questions, I'm gonna take that offline. Like, let's talk about this at a different call. Maybe one day that will be a different service that I offer under a whole nother different business entity. But it's not related to my work as a therapist. It's completely different. It's in housing, it's in property management, it's different, right? So in the case that I had a different business and someone knows me for having different businesses, I would need to have it separated, right? And this is why personally, I have two different entities. Now, Indigenous Circle of Wellness is the private practice, as I mentioned, mental health and wellness. My LLC is coaching and consulting. I do not do the same thing. I do business coaching and consulting. I do business and organizational development That may include a tad bit of wellness in there because sustainability is like high on my list, and I want people to have sustainable businesses and organizations. So of course, with my expertise in wellness, I bring that in, but it's with the mindset and the goal of their personal growth and development and strategic thinking is what I do there, right? I don't do that out of my my private practice. And they complement each other. So I might get called in and say, hey, Monique, we want you to be a consultant on redeveloping a program. I'm actually in the process of doing this right now, where we want to integrate wellness into the program. But my role in that is I'm looking at their entire curriculum and seeing where it needs to be weaved in, right? I'm consulting. Now they're like, we also want to do some workshops and training around mental health and wellness. Well, that's Indigenous Circle Wellness, right? So I said, okay, great. I'm going to put this into the contract, but guess what? I'm going to subcontract my private practice to do that part, because that's what they do. So see how they can complement one another? That's how I set it up. But if your coaching and consulting is under the same umbrella, you do not need to have a different entity. But if you're planning to have a whole different type of service, you do want to have a different entity.
Yeah, thank you. And what that example you just shared around the curriculum, and then like Indigenous Circle of Wellness doing a certain part of the work. I guess what I heard from that too, it's cool to subcontract yourself under a different business, even though it's, especially when it's a different service. That's like legit separation.
Yeah.
Of like service delivery and then of course for the tax information, bookkeeping, all that good stuff. So that's actually really, really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can have multiple businesses like to take on the parts of the sub areas to complement like maybe the main business. And then I would say, yes, Henrietta, for me, like my kind of overarching theme is like wellness, but the way that we provide wellness is through mental health, is like our kind of like focus area. Any other questions before I move on to business essentials? Okay, I'm going to move on, but if there are questions, please put them into the chat. Okay, so business essentials, I'm still staying in this like the foundational areas. These are like the top, I would say the top 5 things when we think of a business and what is like really absolutely needed. And how you get there, everyone's going to be different. What that looks like is very different, but you need to have this. This is particularly for the year 2024 and beyond. And then the bottom part, the 4 bottom bullets is really what I kind of added on around what I feel has been really important to the work that I've done and the sustainability. So having a clear value proposition. So what sets you apart? What makes you, why would someone hire you? What is the thing that you're offering that people want and need? If you're a service provider, what is that? If it's therapy, wonderful, but also there's other people providing therapy. So what is it about the therapy that you provide that is bringing folks in the door that are saying, I want to work with you, right? You got to think about that. Excellent customer service as a service provider, whether you're coaching, consulting, any type of where you're providing something to someone else, you need to have excellent customer service, follow-ups, relationship building. How are they reaching you? What's the return time, like all those things, right? So excellent customer service. You know when you receive great customer service, right? So how are you doing that for others? Effective marketing strategies. So you will need to have a marketing strategy. We will talk, I have a whole slide just on marketing. So we will get into that, of what that could look like, all the possibilities, but you want to have a strategy. And a strategy can be like, the first part of the year, I'm going to focus on this. The second part of the year, I'm going to focus on this. Throughout the year, I'm going to ensure all these things are also happening, right? So it's never just one thing. It's It's several things, but like what's effective. And what's effective is you have to also, one, do market research as well as get feedback. You need to be able to see what is landing, where are people finding you, what is working for your business. Reliable systems and processes, this is really related to like strong operations. You need to have the different systems that do the things that you need it to do for you. How are things moving? How are they flowing? And we'll talk more about some of those systems in a bit. And then a strong online presence. And online, it could be social media, it does not have to be, but there needs to be some type of online presence, and it should be very strong. And you need to, and this is part of that marketing strategy as well. Even though they're separated, they're somewhat, everything is very much intertwined. Is that you need to have a presence online. If you're hiding out and no one can find you, well, how are you going to get business, right? You need to be found. Whatever service you offer, we need to be able to know where to get that information, where to find you. So other things that are really important is, what is your vision, mission, and values? So your vision, what is the bigger vision that you have? What are you trying to accomplish? Okay. What is your mission? How are you going to get there? What are the things that you're going to do in what way? And then your values. What's important to you to have? So think of this as your North Star. This is your guiding light. This is the path. This is the way that you stay on your path and not get sidetracked. Because some of us will be like, oh, that sounds like a good idea. Oh, that sounds like a good idea, but I can do that too. And you probably can, but like, the main thing is like, what is what I'm doing and the way that I'm moving, supporting this vision and this mission. And is it also aligned with my values? So this is your North Star. It's really important. It's what's going to keep you aligned. It's what's going to support your boundaries. So if you haven't thought about that for yourself, for your business, you really want to take some dedicated time to sit with this. And it's fluid, it changes. That's totally fine. But the main thing is you have something where you're starting off with. What licenses or certifications do you need to have is really important. So if you're going to be a service provider providing a professional service such as therapy, you need to be licensed in order to do that, right? To provide that service. So what certifications are needed, what licensing, depending on whatever industry that you're in. Some require it, some do not. If you are a contractor, like in construction, you need to have a contractor's license, right? So that's a license that someone might need for that type of business. For the business that I am in, as far as a therapist, I need to be licensed in the state of California, or wherever I'm providing services, I need to be licensed in that state. For my coaching and consulting business, although I'm a certified professional coach, you don't need to be certified to be a coach. It's a modality, right? So in that business, I didn't have to be certified. I chose to be certified. That was like the route I went in. Do you have the needed professional support and connections? So some of these supports that are going to be really essential is an attorney, CPA, bookkeeper. You're going to need particular professionals at your call. You can email quickly and ask a question to. You can, and there's different ways that this can be set up. Some folks have like memberships that they might be a part of. Others just have someone that they call as needed. But at the end of the day, you need to at least have an attorney, both business and employment, and a CPA. And strong operations. So operations, and we're going to really get into what operations is and how essential it is in the next slide. But operations is so important. And the reason for that is that the operations is really what keeps everything together. It's the flow. It is how everything functions. It's really what is going to sustain you as a person and your business. Okay. So there's a lot on here. This is really going to be for you to take more time to read, But my takeaway what I want to hone in here is what supports a smooth flow. So think of a river, right? Think of a river stream. And what makes that river go without any type of challenges, right? There's big boulders in the way, like how can we get those out? We're thinking of that as those are the challenges within our operations. Operations is really how things are flowing, the ease of it, the ability to step away from your business and things are still functioning without you, right? So it's the systems that you have in place for really great delivery, right? How are things, so we're going to go through the list here, service delivery. How are your customers getting what they signed up for? We say we provide quality mental health services. So on every step of the way, they need to have a quality experience. We say we provide that. We need to deliver that, right? Resource allocation, how are we moving things around? How are we utilizing technology? What systems are we investing in, right? That are making our customer experience as well as our employee experience, like at a high level. Customer interaction, how are we engaging with people, right? After service delivery, how are we checking in on them? How are they remembering who we are? And there's various ways to do this. The process management. So how are things flowing? Are they flowing well? Do they, how are tasks being assigned? Are the right people being assigned to the tasks, right? So we're thinking about if you have employees or even contractors, or any type of additional support, how are you making the best of their talents and also focusing on what you do best in the work that you do, right? We all have strengths. How are we utilizing that? Quality, how are we ensuring that customers or clients are having a good experience? How do we measure that? How are we paying attention to that? What are the things that signal to us that that's happening? Innovation. So we have to stay competitive, right? We're moving in from one way of being of how we provide services to a new one. We're in the age of a lot more technology, AI. Are we using those tools? Are we afraid of those tools? How are we thinking ahead, right? How are we being innovative? Compliance and regulation. This is huge because we can have all the things done really great in operations, but then we're not in compliance. And guess what? Our business can get shut down, right? So we have to stay on top of these things. Capacity planning. This is really important because not only are we planning for, say, the first quarter of a year, we have to think about like the whole year. So I've been in practice, the group practice long enough now to know trends. I see trends within the business. And I also see, so there's certain times of the years where it's more busy with clients. Some parts of the year it's more busy with workshops and training. So we have to stay ahead of it, right? What are the systems that we have in place to take on more clients at a particular time of the year? What do we do when we're filled? How are we planning for that? And the opposite, if it's a slow season, then what are we doing instead to make sure that revenue is coming in, right? Because all of this is highly sustained. When you have employees, you need to make sure you can cover all the bills and payroll. And then risk management. So this is really important as well because when you become a business owner, when you go from sole proprietor into having employees and then having an S Corp or LLC or so forth, everything comes with its risk and you want to minimize risk as much as possible. So you need to have information up front. You want to be able to handle and navigate things as soon as possible. So it really is depending on industry and how your services are provided or what kind of product you have, right? So I'll give an example. We just had an awesome staff barbecue at the park. And it was great. And some of the things, even as we were planning the staff picnic and barbecue, was like, what are folks going to enjoy? What are the staff going to enjoy? What are the kids going to enjoy? But also we're like had different ideas like, oh, yeah, there's a lot of babies. They might eat that. Like they might put that in their mouth. That's a risk. there was another idea of something, oh, I forget what it was. But because we're gonna have small children, we thought about like, oh, my husband wanted to get like this like almost like a dartboard. And I was like, no, it's too risky. Like there's little kids running around, and what if someone like misses and it hits someone? Like like we're liable as a business for that. Like, no. Like let's keep it simple. Softballs and bubbles is where is the route we're gonna go. So that's a way of thinking of like risk management. So I'm gonna pause here and check in again with questions. And this is a question that I did have, so I'm gonna answer it while you all are thinking up some more questions. So what system support operations? There are a ton out there. I use a handful of them, and I've also changed them over time. I think again, it depends on your business plan. What does the growth look like for you? So for example, for me, from the moment that I opened my doors for Indigenous Circle Wellness, I knew that it was going to become a group practice one day. How long that was going to happen, when it was going to happen, I did not know, but I did know it was going to be a group practice. For that reason, I immediately made sure that all the systems I have in place were systems that can grow with as the business grew. So I had right away, I got, now it's called Google Workplace, but it was G Suite at the time. So that way I can add on new employees, and new employees can have their own email address, right? There's a whole back end of it. You add emails for each employee. So everyone has the domain, everything is centralized. We have shared documents, it's a great workflow. Another one is the EHR system, so electronic health record system that I decided to use. I needed to make sure I went with one that was for a group practice, even though I started off in a solo practice. So I went with Simple Practice because Simple Practice had the options for groups to add more employees and to have everything centralized. So that's what I did. There's other platforms that might be cheaper, right? Might do the same thing, but they will not necessarily open it up to growth. One day, I also might decide or hope that to be more of a multidisciplinary team, maybe add a psychiatrist or a nurse practitioner. Simple Practice is set up to add multidisciplinary team. Other platforms do not. So those are things to think about when you think of like the future 10, 15 years from now. What are the systems you need to have in place for the growth to be added on? One thing that I don't think I thought about ahead enough at the time, but we are now moving in that direction, is that when we set up our website, I didn't necessarily think about the growth in the same way that I think about it and know about it now. So our website, we're getting a new website built out to provide to be more visually like appealing and like easier to navigate for all of our therapists, all of our providers and the services that we offer. Right now, I don't feel like it really captures all of it. I feel like there's things missing. So that's another area to think about. The systems, like we use WordPress, and the way it was designed in a way it was really just for like maybe 1 or 2 practitioners and 1 location. But now we have multiple locations and more than 2 providers, right? So there's systems literally for everything. So I would say, think about what is your area that maybe you feel like stuck in, or like, oh, if I had something to help make my life easier, I promise you there is a system out there that you can purchase. Some have like multiple things that are available in like one system. Simple Practice in itself has like automated like reminders both for the therapist and the client. You can book appointments, you can cancel the appointments, you can see invoices, super bills, like it has so many stuff embedded in it. It saves a lot of time. So these are operational systems that save time. It's an investment, but it's a worthwhile investment, right? So the return on investment is great. So I'll pause there and just check in. Questions, comments? What's landing for you?
It's a lot. It's a little overwhelming,
Mhm.
but thank you. It's a lot to think about.
Yes. Yes, it is a lot. It's a lot. And I also want to say that I'm sharing with you like well, now I think about even the planning phases of everything, like nearly 8 years of knowledge and information into 2 hours with you all, right? This is very much a journey, and I feel like it's a lot of information, but we have to take it in bite-sized pieces. There are the essential parts. This is the first part I said, like you should definitely, if you don't have strong systems, if you don't have strong operations, like really focus on that before growth. If you then go into like a new area of growth, you might not be ready for it, and it's going to feel so overwhelming. This is where businesses tend to fail. Or the therapist, I'm sorry, not just therapists, but any type of business owner gets to the point of burnout and they just like give up the business, sell the business, step away from it, right? So I really want to upfront like be honest. It is a lot of work. There is a lot to consider and a lot to take in, but it also is like, maybe for the first half of 1 year, you focus on this. Another year, you focus on this. And then you just kind of keep on tightening it up, making it better with time. And then it just becomes more maintenance than anything. But it is a lot of work, and it can be very overwhelming. So I get that. Lena.
I wanted to ask, how do you do market research? Like, I've been working on my business plan. I feel pretty good about like, my vision and all of that sort of stuff, but how do you do market research? I don't even know where to start with that.
So, what is the population that you intend to work with?
I intend to work with I guess kind of like first generation people, but also their parents are very comfortable with that like immigrant population, that 1.5 and like first generation sort of thing. So
Mhm.
I think around that, yeah.
Okay, so where would you find them? Where do they hang out? Where are they at?
So I get like churches, like school stuff, like like they're the parents of little kids and stuff. Like I can imagine where I would be able to find them. I mean, laundromats, colleges, and first generation panels for like new students. Like, yeah, I can imagine those places.
Okay, there you got it.
Okay.
That's your market research.
Uh-huh. But like, how do I even like, what do I even do? I guess like, what do
Yeah.
I do with that?
Yeah. So the main thing is you know where to find them. You need to know where your clients are at.
Yeah.
And then you need to what are the different ways to reach them?
Mm-hmm.
So the way that you're going to reach parents at like, in particular, maybe first or second generation parents, might be after school, like when they pick up their kids.
Okay. So
It-
this might be like a dumb question, but I guess like I'm confused as to what market research is then. Does it mean like where I'm gonna find them? Because I know that. I guess I think of market research as like learning about that population or demographic or whatever and understanding their needs.
It is, but you already did all that.
Yeah, well, I've done all that,
You
okay.
did all that. You
Is there,
are part of the community. You know your community, right?
yeah.
So and this is like we use these big old words, right? Market research, like it's like some like data research
Like I'm
project.
imagining like tables and graphs that I have to
No,
put
no.
together and like you know what I mean? Like it does sound very fancy and like big, like I have no idea what it is, but that's what it is.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So the market research is researching, just looking over who is your market.
Uh-huh.
Market, and then the strategy, right? The market strategy is how are you going to reach them?
Okay, I can do that.
You
I
can, yep. Just put a board on the wall, a chart
Okay.
paper.
I already have plans for that. I thought that was like under something else, but that's what market research is.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah, so your market research is honestly done. Many of us have been doing market research our entire life,
Yeah.
right? My community, who I serve, I've been in my community since I was born. I
Yes.
know what my family needs, my community needs. And as time goes on, I'm paying more attention, right? What are the shifts? What are the changes? What are the needs now, given the time, whatever the case may be? But nonetheless, like, you know where they're at. So how do you make sure they see you? How do you let them know? This is a strategy. How do you let them know that you are a resource to them?
Got it. Okay.
And
That's
there's-
like such a better way of like conceptualizing it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for asking that. And we will talk more about marketing, but yes, that's a great thing to just know upfront. Like that's market research. Yeah. Even business planning. Sometimes people get like, oh, I have to do this whole like sketched out thing of business planning. It doesn't have to be that like that. It doesn't have to be that. It really is what is your vision and how you're gonna get there. That's your business plan. And there's gonna be different avenues to get there, and you might need to do different things in different parts of your business, and you'll have to pivot when things need to be pivoted, like a global pandemic, right? Like these are things that we then like my business plan completely changed from 2019 to now, right? We're also in another like change area, because I'm like, oh wait, well, actually this is working, but not completely. So let's change it, right? So the plan changes, but it's like, what's the starting point? At the end of the day, what stays consistent is who we serve and how we serve them. That's been consistent across time. Just with the services that we offer, but the ways in which we do that and how we reach them has changed, and will continue to. So thank you for that. Any last questions before we head into a break? Okay, if there's any questions that come up, put them in the chat, or wait till the next opportunity. We will have some. We're going to be going into business scaling next. So take a lot of deep breaths. If you thought the first part was a bit complicated and complex, the second part, I'm warning you, can get really complicated. But this is why we're here. We're here to learn together and to and see about what that looks like, and ask all the questions and get a sense of it. So let's take a break. I'll see you all in 5 minutes. Oops, welcome back, everyone. I hope you all had a nice little 5-minute break. We're gonna get into the next section, which is business scaling. And I do have a warning. The warning is it's gonna get complex. Again, I want you to remember that everything happens in steps, but this is like the overarching things that you want to have in mind and know about upfront when scaling your business. This is for like business growth, what is needed, right? And I also just wanted to kind of circle back real quick on the question around the market research, because with therapy, I felt very like off the get-go, like I knew who my client base is, I knew how I'm gonna serve them, how to reach them, all the things. But I'm actually in a different phase right now with my coaching and consulting work, because there's the relationships I already have, but I'm also trying to reach more people. So I am doing market research right now. I'm paying attention. So my market research is I'm paying really close attention to the places where I'm having the most engagement. What are people enjoying? What are they needing more? What are they asking more for? So I'm paying really close attention to that. I don't know entirely yet, but based off of the last, I would say, like 3 to 6 months, and me doing more things, doing more of the like business talks and stuff, because before I wasn't doing that. I was doing workshops, but I was not doing other other ways to engage. And I'm like, people love this, like let's do more of it. I love it. So that is helping me get more information. But other businesses, right? If you're selling a product, sometimes you do need to do a little bit more research around like where's your product gonna sell, who the population is it too narrow? Does it need to be a larger reach? So those are some things to consider. But ultimately, when you're a service provider, you are paying attention to the community. Who do you plan to serve? Who do you want to be your client, and how do you reach them? And again, we'll go into more of the marketing stuff in another slide, but scaling your business, what is needed for growth. So there's a lot of points here that I'm gonna break it down, okay? What I want us to, the main takeaway from all of this that I'll share is that you don't need to know all of it. What you're gonna need to know is the right people to support you with these different areas when you're having an employer contractor. And why is this brought up as a first thing of growth? Is that at some point you will need, in any type of growth, you will need to hire. Whether that's a contractor or an employee, you will need to hire. And these are the things you need to know or to have support around, because they're laws, they're requirements, there are things that we need to have at the forefront, right? But there are HR consultants, there are HR specialists, there are lawyers and attorneys that are going to be on deck, people who you hire for short periods of time or as ongoing for consultation to support you in these areas. So you don't need to know every single employment law. You don't need to know every state and federal tax law or how the taxes work. You just need to have the right people on your team that is part of your support system so that you're doing it correctly. Okay. So the things in red here on the left side of the screen are these are really important things that you want to have support around and do your best to not make a mistake in, because it can cost a lot. It can cost you time, money, and energy. So you want to make sure that you're doing them properly and correctly. And again, depending on what state you're in, even as so much as like what county you're in, some of these things might change a bit. An example of that is wages. Wages in the county and the city of Los Angeles are different from the state. They're higher. If you are employed in the county of Los Angeles, the minimum wage is higher than other parts of the state. You need to know that, because if you're paying someone and your business is located in Los Angeles, you need to make sure that you're adhering to those what the wages are. There's a recent employment law that came into effect for 2024, which is that all employees get 40 hours of sick time when they're like, once they're employed with you gets at the forefront. So we need to make sure, one, that all of our staff knew, all of our employees knew about that. And that also that we're allocating that into the budget and that we are ensuring that they are able to take the time off. If I did not know that, and so, I mean, those are potential risk management issues there. So employment laws. Do I read laws every day? No, I do not. Do I know all the laws? No, but we have an HR component of our payroll system that we pay extra for. So I have questions I call, and as laws change, they update us regularly on the changes. And then we make those, they let us know, put this into your employee handbook. So again, these are like the resources and things you want to consider. There's different ways to do it. This is how we've chosen to do it in our practice. The moment you move from a sole proprietor and by yourself, you're not hiring anyone, not contracting anyone, things are quite breezy, honestly, right? Then it doesn't get too complicated. How you pay yourself, it is kind of like up to you. There's not like, you don't have to have like sick time if you don't want to. There a lot of requirements are not necessarily there if you are the only person within your business. You do need to pay yourself, but the ways you pay yourself, an accountant can help you with the various types of ways to do that. But it gets really complicated once you hire somebody. Now, it's a little less complicated when you hire an independent contractor, because an independent contractor is technically, they're their own person, their own business. But nonetheless, you are still coming up against some things you need to consider. One, do you have contracts in place so that the contractor is very aware of their scope of work? You have it listed there what you're paying them and what you're paying them for, and that you are not employing them. So you're not giving them any type of direction. They have a specialization that you're paying them for, and that's it. And they're not an employee, right? Versus employees is like, now you're paying payroll taxes. You are required, once you have an employee, they need to submit a W-2 form. There's particular insurances that you have to have as a business owner. You should always have general liability insurance, but then then you will be required to have workers' comp insurance. And if you're a service provider, with a professional service malpractice insurance, for you, your business, and your employees. Some of these are overarching, but nonetheless, you have to have insurances. With the state, you're gonna have to set up EDD, or I think it's more federal, but nonetheless, you have to set up set it up so that certain amount of funds are getting like allocated there, and you're gonna have to have an employee handbook. So this employee handbook one, by the way, like really took me for a tailspin when I went from having just independent contractors to employees, because the state of California changed its laws from like who can be considered like a 1099. And when I went into employees, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to have all these things in like a matter of 20 days, because I learned about the law change at the end of 2019 and it went into effect at the beginning of 2020. But again, with the right systems in place, like handbooks, they're kind of, there's some that are already like pre-done, and you just edit it to be specific to your business. So you don't have to really start anything from scratch. There are different resources out there. So the main, again, takeaways here is that you will need to have support around and know about employment laws. You should have a general understanding of it, and or someone to ask the questions to. You will have to pay state and federal taxes, both at the upfront. So when you run payroll, there's an amount of money that is taken out of your revenue. And then there's also employment taxes that you will have to pay as well. And then they tax you a lot. I'm not gonna lie. In the state of California in particular, there's a lot of taxes. And based on the revenue that you end with at the end of the year, if it's at a positive and a certain amount, you will have to pay taxes back on that. So this is where the accountant is going to be really essential when there's a big income flow and also payroll. These are things to account for when you're thinking about the overarching essentially like the bills, like the overhead, people don't always factor in the state and federal taxes of what they're gonna pay. So I do see some practices out there, and I am curious because they're like, well, they're getting paid this, and that. I'm like, that sounds great, but like, is the business owner thinking about the taxes that they're paying or that they're gonna pay? I just have questions sometimes because it sounds great, but also I'm a little concerned. And then also with the employees and the thing I want to also talk about with the employees and independent contractors is that there is a questionnaire online that you can find on the IRS to determine if a staff member should be, if someone that you're hiring should be an employee or a contractor. You don't want to mess up on this part because it could be it's a liability and it goes against employment laws. So someone might start off as an independent contractor and then you move them into an employee because their tasks may have changed or shifted. Okay. I'm gonna pause right there real quick. Is there any questions that folks have on this? No? Okay. This also might be the area you're like, I don't want employees in, this is a whole lot. Like, again, it's in steps, little by little, and with the right support, you will be good to go. But as you grow, you're gonna have to hire. So it's inevitable. I'm gonna tell you why, because you cannot do it by yourself. At some point, you're gonna need to hire an employee, or you're going to need to hire like contractors for different types of reasons, and you need to know how to ensure that they get what they need on the tax end, on the employment end. So if you only have 1099s, let's say like we 1099 our accountant, we 1099 our graphic designer. Okay, so they're not employees of mine, but they have specialized areas that they do specific things for us, right? At the end of the year or the beginning of the following year, I have to give them a tax form for the 1099. They get their tax form, the 1099 tax form. Well, you have to generate that, or you have to have a system in place, like a payroll system that generates it for you. And then you have to file that with the IRS. These are all the things that your CPA would help you with. Okay. So growth and sustainability, to carry on with it, is that at some point you will need to have an executive assistant or operations manager. You might have a clinical coordinator. So there's whatever you decide the title to be, you're going to have to think about hiring support. You won't be able to get to all the things. And remember, when we think about the business essentials, if we're talking about quality services and customer service as like one of the foundational things of a business, there's no way you can do that if you're doing it all by yourself and you're overwhelmed. The quality and the way that the services are provided are going to dwindle, are not going to be great. And your business might not succeed because of that. So this is where I'm saying like growth and sustainability, like it's not like, well, I can do it by myself. Like, no, at some point you're going to need the help. So just know that now. You will need a support system for self-care. Being a business owner in general is a lot of energy, a lot of work. It can be very draining. So having a plan of care for yourself is really important. When do you notice the times of the year that you're getting burned out? When do you need to take a vacation? You need to take a break. How often do you need it? Just what do you have? I have a massage membership because that's part of my self-care. Like I need to use it more often, but it's there. Who is your support system and team? You're going to need that. So it's not just like who's working with you in the business, but who's outside of the business that's helping really support. HR support, as I mentioned, is going to be essential. You're going to need that. How you have that, there's many avenues for that. Same thing with the CPA. Some CPAs also offer bookkeeping. So some CPAs will just do your taxes. And you might have a CPA who does like your ongoing bookkeeping and shares with you information quarterly. So you want to ask that to a CPA of like, what does their service entail? Some will provide you with like a monthly fee. Some have like a year-long membership, but what's included in that? What are you getting with that? The top things that you do want to have is that you want to be able to run reports on a monthly basis. You want to see how the month end went, quarterly, and then of course yearly, and then someone that's going to be doing your taxes. The CPA that I currently have does all the things. She and her partner who own their CPA business do pretty much all the stuff for us. We take on a portion of the bookkeeping, like the initial bookkeeping, and then they finalize everything. So after every month, we have a month end report, and I see exactly what we made, what if there was, I could see all the financial stuff there. What revenue we brought in, what was the bills looking like, all of that. And you should be able to always see that. You have to keep an eye on the finances. There's just no way around it. Business attorney, the business attorney is going to be really helpful with like looking up like trademarks, copywriting, even establishing your business entity. If you're a sole proprietor, they can help establish this business entity for you. A CPA can also do that. Some do, some don't. Just ask those questions. An employee attorney is going to be helpful once you have employees, to make sure that if you say, for example, need to write someone up and you want to make sure you're doing it in the right way. If you maybe need to fire someone, there's certain ways that you have to do that. You want to consult with them ahead of time, make sure that you're crossing all your T's and dotting all your I's. Those are all things that are going to be really important from like the attorneys. A business consultant and coach. So this is important because there's always someone else that has been doing it, and they're going to give you a lot of support and guidance. Obviously, I offer this, but there's many out there. So finding the right fit for you. I'm currently part of a business consultant, a business coaching program where I'm a student. Like I'm learning more because I'm trying to scale in another direction, or continuing to scale. And I wanted to be in space with other established private practice owners with larger practices to see how they're doing it. Because it's a whole nother level of growth. I need additional support with that. I don't know all the things, and there's people doing it, right? So I have a business coach for that. And then I also have a business coach for my other business, for the coaching and consulting, because it's a different service. So you do want to have other professionals that will be supporting you and guiding you. A lot of the times they have templates, they will have different resources. I mean, just in the last 3 months, we've added so many awesome programs and like systems into our practice that have made my life so much easier. I'm like, oh my gosh, if I would have known that like 2 years ago, I would have saved a lot of time. But this is how we learn and we grow, right? Customer relationship management. So a CRM system, or an electronic health record system. So if you're a therapist, an EHR is like simple practice. You're gonna need one. You cannot do this work and grow without having some type of EHR system. And then in your like coaching or consulting work, or if you do any type of project management, maybe you have like a large contract, you also want to consider having a customer relationship management or a CRM. This is going to be another kind of similar to an EHR system, but a CHR specific to like health and wellness, where a CRM is going to be more to customers that are not like receiving a professional service. And then the last and most important thing as far as growth and sustainability is a dream team. Like, who is going to be on your team? Who do you need? Who is going to complement you as the business owner, and the leadership that you bring? Like, who are those folks, right? So it's really important to hire the right talent to support the growth of the talent that you have. And how do you plan to do that? We all come in with great skill sets and knowledge, but also there's areas that we can all grow from. And how are you going to support your team in that way? Some of it might be you as the business owner training and supporting. Others, it might be like you're sending them for trainings. You're investing in their leadership. You're investing in their skill sets. But also from the get-go, like who's gonna, like, what are you looking for? What is your business based off of your North Star, your vision? Who do you need to be a part of that team? Okay. So these are all things that if you don't have them yet, or maybe you might have a few, start considering how you begin implementing or accessing these different resources. into your business. I did talk about this a bit. It's just kind of more of a refresh of the management and leadership. So you want to, how are you developing like the talent development and culture of your business? I will say for Indigenous Circle Wellness, like we have a culture, definitely a culture of care amongst each other. We really care about each other's wellness and health. We do check, and how we do that is we do like wellness check-ins regularly. We're very big on like taking time off. So we have PTO time embedded. We have sick time. You know, sick time is part of the employment laws. We also give PTO. We allow our staff to also schedule based off what works for them and their family. Like we have our goals, like our overarching goals and like needs of the practice, but then the way that our team really is, like they have a lot of autonomy at the same time. That's how it works best for us. That's our work culture. That might not be best for how you want to develop your work culture. And the talent that's going to be a best for that. We are also a mostly like remote staff. So I also like the team that I have is great at being able to work in other places other than the office together. That's not for everyone. We've had staff where it does not work for them. They actually need to be in a place every single day at a certain time. That is fine. That just wasn't like we weren't the best fit for them in that sense, right? So what type of staffing do you need? Who's part of that team? And how is your leadership? And then also the leadership of your team. Financial management is going to be huge. I did mention that you need to pay attention to your finances. You need to look at your bank accounts on a regular basis, like daily. If there's something that's a little off, you got to figure it out. Like, what is this? How are you managing the flow of the finances? How are you budgeting correctly? We project out for the entire year. We know like pretty much what all the bills are going to look like. And then we can like, okay, I'll ask our operations manager, are we able to purchase this? And based off the finance, she could say yes or no. Like, let's wait until next month because we're waiting for these funds to come in, or that's not a good idea right now, right? So I also lean on my team and their expertise areas within the practice to let me know, but you want to have a good financial management. And then I've already went over all these other areas in previous slides, but just wanted to like highlight them again, because they're not only in the foundational areas, it's in the sustainability and growth section. And the last part on this particular slide that I want to mention is bottlenecks. So these are like, again, thinking about the flow of the river, like where's the area where it starts getting like all kinds of debris and it starts to slow down, right? So in your system, in your operation, from the time a client or a person who's a customer reaches out to you, what is the flow? Where does it get stuck? That's the bottleneck. Sometimes we have one main one, sometimes we have multiple ones. We need to address them immediately because that's where like the flow of things need to be like reshifted. So for us in our practice, with our clinical director, and Kylie's on here, is that we were like, we're having a hard time. We're getting clients, but then they're getting kind of like, there's too much time between the time they sign up for services or request services and how we get them onto one of the therapist calendars. It's just, it's like a week and a half. It's too much time. So how do we make that more quick? How does that become like a faster process? Because people, when they're looking for services, they want to get connected pretty immediately. So how do we filter it through and then get them connected? So we integrated a system that does like an auto email with our link for scheduling after they've completed the form. So that was a bottleneck. Now we don't have that. And actually Kylie doesn't even need to do emails anymore because the system we have in place does the email for her. It's an auto system. So that is time that before she would have to look at the email, you know, write the email, send the email, wait for a response, like there's back and forth. We've eliminated that. So bottlenecks, think about in your current business or in your future, like what are the areas that you think things might get stuck? And how can they continue to flow? Is there a system? Is there a person that you need to include there so that it doesn't stop the flow. Okay. So, let's talk about, or let's just check in. Questions. Questions. And I did have a submitted question, so I'll answer this one as well. But are there any questions? I need a break from talking. How about feelings? How are you feeling?
I feel a lot better. I'm super nervous because it's going to be my first year doing business taxes, and my business tax person, because I was very nervous. So I submitted my stuff to her a little later than I probably should have. So she filed an extension. She makes it very non-nervous. Like, you don't have to be scared of anything, even though I'm totally terrified. But it feels good to hear the information and to like absorb it and like stop letting the fear kind of like stop me from doing stuff. So I like doing these things. I like getting this information because it just like continues to propel me where I know that I want to be and like know that I can do it. It just feels big and scary. But a little bit at a time, and then it like you can't, like, if I can imagine myself like what I'm going to be doing in 5 years, it seems too astronomical, right? So it's like you got to focus on like literally just the next right step, the best step, and get help doing that. So that's how I'm absorbing all of this.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely have to break it down. So the vision again is that North Star. That's the journey, right? That's where the journey will be. It's the marathon, really. But there's going to be steps along the way and areas that we're going to focus on in that. I actually was just doing a planning meeting for the next quarter, or quarter two, with the coaching program that I'm participating in. And one of the things that they asked is, okay, like they gave us like 10 minutes, like write down all of the kind of like goals for quarter two. So I wrote them down. That was like 10. And okay, now like really hone in on the essentials, like just what's essential right now, what can wait. And I did that. I got down to 3, and those are the 3 things I will focus on. Although there's 10, I'll get to it at some point, maybe later this year, maybe next year. They're not essential. What are the essential things? Because that's gonna move us into the next quarter and into the end of the year, right? So you do want to really hone in on what it is. So even in the last slide, like these are all the things, like you don't need to have all the things right now. But if you're already in business and you're a sole proprietor, you're seeing clients, like definitely, like we're in tax season. Like if you haven't got a CPA, like this is the time. Like, this should be your main focus right now, is making sure your taxes are getting submitted or getting the extension in, right? And I would say for the first 3 years of business, I did always get an extension every year. I was just like still trying to figure out how to make sure that all my all of the sheets were done. When I first started, I did everything in Excel, which was fine back then, but we've grown a lot. So I cannot rely on an Excel spreadsheet the way I used to. Now I need to make sure I have a really great system. I use QuickBooks, and even in that, there's a lot of like subcategories and all of that. So it's over time, things will start to evolve. And it's just getting your foot, get your foot in the door, and you keep on moving, and you just keep moving that along. So, thank you for that. I also wanted to answer this question, which is how to set up an income-based sliding scale, and how to choose between insurance panels, and how to get started with the one. So I'm gonna answer the first question, which is sliding scale. So sliding scale is really going to be dependent on a lot of different things you have to consider in your practice or in your business. And that is, what is the amount of revenue, the amount of money that you need to make to function, and have a profit. That's first. Because you can offer sliding scales all day long, but if it's not covering the overhead of your business, the wages of yourself or your employees, you cannot be offering a sliding scale. You can only offer the sliding scale when you know that there's a buffer, there's an area that you're able to do that, right? And the sliding scale can also be really dependent on what you're able to offer. So sliding scale can be like $10 off. It can be half the price. You have to determine that. But how you determine that is calculating all of your overhead, all of your expenses as a business, including your salary. And then from there, seeing, can I afford it? Because based off of the clients that I have right now, as you know, say I have a caseload of 20, they're all paying full fee. You know what? I have a little room to offer a sliding scale session here, 1 or 2 at this rate. You know, my full rate's 175. I can offer it at 120. I can do that. But you have to look at what your overall bills are. What does the overhead look like before you make this decision? The way that we're able to do it, and it's changed over time, is that because whenever we've had the opportunity to bring in large contracts, we're able then to set aside a certain amount of money to say, okay, we can probably offer this year this many scholarships. We have like kind of like a separate funding knowledge of like, we have this much money. Let's just say it's like $5,000 as an example. We can spend down if someone needs a one-off session that they couldn't pay for, they're going to financial hardship, we will offer that. And then we've also learned different ways to meet the needs of the community so that we're not taking the financial hit of the sliding scale rate, like a reduced rate, but the community member might not have that rate. So we partner with other organizations. So they pay the full or a majority of the rate on the client's behalf, and then the client pays either a smaller portion or no fee for the service, but we're still getting paid full rate for it. So there's different ways to meet the needs of the community without you reducing your rate if you can't afford that. So there's different ways to do it. We don't currently offer any main sliding scales. We're not like, oh, we offer sliding scales. What it is that if our caseload allows it, typically after 10 or 12 clients at full rate, then we can offer like a 13th space at a sliding scale at like $100, $120 a session. So you have to really think about your own calculation that is very specific to your business and what you're currently bringing in. So that's just some information on that. How to choose between insurance panels. It's another question, like, what is your overhead? Some insurance panels are very easy to work with, don't require a lot of back and forth. The setup is very easy, and the payout is decent. Some are like not worth it at all. And I'm not gonna share what insurance panels right here that I would like to steer clear of. I could share with you offline, but this is recorded, so I will not share that. But what you want to know here is that you want to ask the questions about like, what is their rate? What are they going to pay you out? What are they, how quickly is their payout? You want to know their process. So you get this information a lot by asking other providers of what's working for them and which ones they like, what insurance panels you would not want to work with. So I hope that answers that question. There are some folks who have done it where you can hire like a consultant who will just get you on like a ton of different insurance panels. And so it sounds great, but let me tell you, when you get on an insurance panel, you're contracted with that insurance panel. So now you are bound to those rules and regulations with that insurance panel. You have to think about, is that going to work for you and for your business model, or who and how you want to serve people? So you just have to think about what you also get yourself into and if it works best for you. That's inclusive of contracts. We don't take all contracts, even if we don't go based on the dollar amount. We go based like, does this really fit with our vision, mission, and values? Okay. Lena.
how do you, I wanted to ask the question about the insurance panels, like, how do you even get started on that?
Um, that's a whole nother workshop.
Yeah,
The way that you get started on it is first and foremost, you need to have, well, you want to know if you're going to start it as a sole proprietor or as a business. So if you're planning to get, if you're planning to scale, which I'm imagining everyone here is at some point, you either are in the process or will eventually scale. You want to, you're going to need an MPI number for your business entity. So you have an MPI number, the national, that national number as an individual. Most of us have all worked in community mental health at some point. You already have it. You need to have your personal one, and then you also need to have your business one.
Yeah.
Once you have the business one, the next step is really just contacting the insurance company directly. It can be just that you reach out to the insurance company. I'll give you Kaiser as an example. They have an area for like potential contractors or like providers. You go through their application process. They're going to ask you a lot of questions. They're going to ask you like, it's an application, like almost like a job application before your business.
Got it.
So you're just gonna need to have like your EIN number. You're gonna need to have like your business name, like all the stuff, like IRS information ready to provide to them, address. You submit the application. And then every insurance company is a little bit different, but the standard practice is you do an application, you submit it, you wait, they will respond back to you and ask for additional information. At some point you get approved. Once you get approved to be credentialed, then they will move into the contract. In the contracting phase of it, they will let you know what is the rate that they're going to pay you for the type of services that you offer and the different billing codes. And then, you sign and now you're credentialed with them.
Mhm.
Now, the things that you need to have set up to do to pretty much bill, there's different ways to do it. We, again, as I mentioned, use Simple Practice. So in Simple Practice, we do all of our billing through Simple Practice. There's a clearinghouse that is connected to Simple Practice. So there's like an additional entity that like filters through the claims. But you will, if you don't already know them, you will need to get familiar with billing codes. You're going to need to make sure that this is the area where if you're going to be diagnosing, or if you do diagnose, or you're going to need to diagnose because insurance is going to require a diagnosis. You're going to need to make sure that all the diagnosed codes are correct, so there's a lot more things that you need to have in place. If you're going to be a primary insurance-based practice, you might need to consider a biller. If you're not strong in billing, you're going to need to have a biller or someone that's going to really follow up on the billing side of things. We do bill some insurances, but we're not a primary insurance-based practice, so we haven't needed to have a biller. But let's say if we grew our practice with more providers doing insurance, that would be the next step I would need to consider, is getting a biller, someone who's going to pay attention to the submission of the claims and that they're accurate and that the funds are coming through. Currently, our clinical director does that, but it's not as much as other practices may do. We're mostly on private pay and contracted. So I hope that helps in answering that question. Okay. We have about less than 20 minutes, so I'm going to really run through the next pieces here, and then have opportunity for us to have more questions at the end. There's just a few more slides. So diversifying services, really the main takeaway from this slide is that there are many ways to diversify our services and set up expansion. So I added some here. It's not an exhaustive list at all. You might have one or more of these implemented into your business model. You might change over time, but some folks think that the only way of expansion is like a group practice. That is not the case. You can have employees and still not be a group practice. You can be a solo practitioner with a team of folks who also do other things, right? So a group practice would be you and other practitioners doing like us providing the service together, but you can also still be a small business providing different things. An example might be like, We don't do it this way at our practice, but an example would be like, I do the therapy, and then I have employees who do, mental health and workshop facilitation only. They don't do therapy, they just do workshop and facilitation. Our model and our practice is actually all of our providers are also facilitators. These are like, I just have an awesome team of folks who are incredible therapists and also happen to be incredible facilitators. This is part of like my dream team, right? Because this is what we do a lot of. So that was an important part of when we hire in that, keeping that in mind. So group practice ownership is one way, diversifying your revenue streams. So having insurance contracts, private pay, grants, there's many ways to have funds. We use a little bit of all of them, but lean more heavily on contracts and private pay for our practice. You can have complementary offerings. So it might be an additional offering specifically within your practice that you have in addition to, which I'll give you an example. We do workshops and trainings that are paid. People pay us for it. We do therapy services, but additionally, we offer free coffee breaks. If anyone has attended one of our coffee breaks, like that is an additional complimentary offering. It's free to community. It's not therapy. It's a space that we hold and we bring people together. That's a complimentary offering. So you can do that too. It's all again under the umbrella of mental health and wellness. A multidisciplinary team, I mentioned this, that maybe in the future I might want to add a psychiatrist or like a nurse practitioner, someone to do medication management, partnership or collective. So some folks are like, you know what, I do not want to have employees. I'm not about that life. It's totally fine. But I want to be in an office space with a lot of other providers. That can be more of a partnership or a collective where you're like the therapist and you're in an office space with a yoga instructor, a Reiki therapist. You know, you can also have different things if you don't want to be the boss of all the folks. You're just part of a collective. A great example of who does this is Corazon Counseling. If anyone knows Emilia from Corazon Counseling, she doesn't have therapists any longer that work under her, but she has a collective. So people who rent space from her, we're one of them that rent space from her. She has doulas, lactation specialists, she has massage therapy, like she has all kinds of different services in the space, but she's not in, like, they just rent space and then she can like refer people to them. And that's her model and it works really well for her. So there's another, other list of different ways that you can diversify and expand your services, including like specialty locations. So there's some practices that might have like, say their alley office only focuses on teens and adolescents, right? And then their office in the San Fernando Valley is for adults, for parents and other adults, right? So you can have also specialty areas of like locations if you choose to. Okay, I'm going to skip the questions for this part because I want to get to the marketing slide first, and then we'll have questions because then we'll end after those questions. Okay. So marketing, the main thing here is marketing is essential. You cannot go around it, but there's so many ways of marketing. I listed them all on the right side in no particular order. And it's not an exhaustive list. Like even after I wrote this, I'm like, oh my gosh, and there's this, and there's this, and there's this. These are just things that kind of came to me right away, but there's so many ways of marketing. So how are you reaching the people who you're planning to serve? Who are your customers, your clients? I would say that you don't want to just lean on one. You want to always do multiple, but choose the things that work best for you, that you enjoy doing, that comes in most natural. And sure, try out the things that you're not as natural at, or you're kind of like, I don't know about that. Try it out. Just try it. What can happen from just trying it out? I've tried a lot of things, and some things land and other things I'm like, oh, like that's too much. I think I shared with some folks before, like TikTok, like, try the TikTok, we're on TikTok, but I don't know, it's just not my thing. But I've been actually like really liking the reels on IG, and I've been making reels and they've been fun. So that is a marketing strategy. So marketing is promoting. How are you promoting yourself and your work that you're doing for your business, for yourself? We talked about market research, understand your customer needs, product development. What is sorry, like there's a typo there, but what service is needed? So what are you developing? So you want to develop things based off of your customer base and the research you have. So if you know there's a need, like meet the need. Pricing strategies, you want to think about that for what is again your mission vision. How are you pricing things? What are the various entry points? And you don't have to meet all the needs. You get to decide that of how you're going to reach your customer. As I mentioned, like we still want to be able to work with folks might not be able to pay for our services, but we do it in a way through contracts versus offering free services that we wouldn't be able to afford to get for free, right? We do it in other unique ways. So we're still meeting the need, but we're finding a different route to do that. Advertising, distribution channels are different ways of just how are you getting out there, branding. What is your brand? If you don't have one, get thinking about that. Usually that's colors, might be a color scheme, it might be a tagline. It's like, how do people know it's you? It's your logo, right? So we have our logo on a lot of stuff. We have stickers that now have our website on it. So it has the logo, our name, and then our website so people can find us and get information. We have pamphlets, we have online, social media accounts from almost all like social media platforms. And the colors you're going to see that they stay consistent, right? I'm still kind of developing my color kind of scheme for my coaching and consulting business. I'm really going, if you already noticed, more of like a minimalistic look where my therapy practice has more vibrant colors. And so I'm doing more minimalistic look for my coaching and consulting, not as big colors, more simplified. So that I'm going to stay consistent in that. I think it's going to stay with the black and white and gray kind of like tone for the coaching and consulting work. That's what I've been leaning into. It's been feeling natural to me. But if you go onto our Instagram page for Indigenous Circle of Wellness, you see a lot of turquoise, right? Even my office right here, we have turquoise walls. You're going to see this consistent. This is our branding. Okay, so what is your branding? So final questions. We have 10 more minutes together. And I'd love to hear from folks, either questions, feedback, feelings. Susan.
I put it in the chat, but so it's kind of going back a little bit to insurance panels. The CAQH?
Yeah.
I'm not, so what is that exactly? Like, that's not because I know it's not going directly with the insurances, but something that you said scared me. Like, I don't want something to automatically put me onto insurance panels that I'm going to have to work to get off of. I would want to be able to choose which panels I choose to be on. So I'm not even sure I understand what that thing is.
Okay, good question. So what this is a centralized place where your information lives for insurance panels. So instead of having, so some insurance panels will use it and others will not, but think of it as like your therapist profile so that across the states, whatever, wherever insurance is at, they have one place to look at your information in all its entirety. So it has like your license information there, it has your business address or business addresses if you have multiple locations, your specialty areas, your MPI number. It pretty much gives one centralized location for all of the needed information an insurance panel might need. They have access to this, or they can gain access to it by, they have like a login and they can pull the information to make sure it matches up with your application, in its entirety or like in portions. Yeah, so Kylie put you authorize who can access it, so they can request and then you can give them access to it. And what it is that it just helps it streamline across different insurances so that it's in one place and you don't have to keep changing it. So we Kylie actually updates this for us as a practice every month for the entire practice. So if we did have a location change, we would update it there. If our hours change, we would update it there. It really just kind of has a snapshot of you and or your practice in a central place that the insurances that you're on or want to get on will have access to. So if you do plan on getting on insurances, you do want to create an account and keep it updated. And they send you regular update notifications every month to keep it updated. It doesn't cost anything or anything like that.
Thank you. That was helpful.
Yeah, there's a lot of these little things like you mentioned like this. There's also like people have questions around like, how do I get business credit? Like you're also going to need a DUNS number, and there's going to be like, there's all these like other very specific things that I did not have a chance to talk about today. But again, they are specific to you. So this is where like the more individualized business support is going to be really helpful in what your business plan is and like the growth would look like and what steps you need to get there. Today's is really foundation, just like what you should have or consider. But there's so many intricate little pieces for each business. That's a good way to put it, Kylie. Yeah, it's like a resume, general application. Yeah. Any other questions?
This is not a question, but it's more, I mean, just really grateful for the framing and also the thinking about scaling and prioritizing certain things that are necessary to move forward. And I've been in this place of continued growth, which feels very good and overwhelming at the same time. And so like really thinking, yes, I can't do it all, right? I have been doing it all, and now I'm at a point where now I can. So like to really like think about the systems that need to be continued to be in place or modified or updated, changed, and so forth, or added on to and stuff. So like the few places that I need to start to dedicating to hiring or bringing people on, that became very clear to me. I need someone with client flow and I need someone to help with marketing. Those are two specific places that I'm kind of walking away from here. I knew it, right? But it's like just having the space to hear you out and hear your process and the way you frame things. So I'm really, really grateful because I'm going away with like tangible next steps of what I need to do. It's gonna, take me a little while, but it's really like clear in terms of my growth. Including the multiple entities as well. Like I feel really good about the direction that I've been already like scheming in my brain, but now like I got like direction and clarity. So yeah, just wanted to share that. Really grateful.
Thank you so much for that feedback. I'm so glad that it's been helpful in that way. I want to answer the question from Jen is like, how do you go about contracting other organizations? So I can give you the example of how we contract or a few contracts that we have and how they've been set up. We have a contract with an organization. It's a nonprofit organization who wrote us into their grant. So part of their planning process and our partnership with them is that in their application process, they wrote us into it. So we had an established relationship years prior. This is an organization and folks who I've known for probably the past 10 years. And as they were thinking about their program needs, they wanted to have a mental health component. But of course, they were like, we can't develop a whole mental health section. So how can we, they thought about contracting. So they contracted us. We're their entity where all the mental health services get funneled through, right? So it's with students, Native students in LA County. And so in that particular contract, they wrote us in. And then we created a whole operational system of how those referrals come into us, how they get transferred over, how we get paid, right? So we have an MOU and we have a very lengthy contract of like what the overarching goals of the program are and our specific scope of work in that contract. And we've had to amend it a few times just because the needs, it's a 5-year grant. And so the needs of the community has shifted a little bit. So we've been able to about, I would say every year and a half to 2 years, we've made some changes to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the community best. But our main focus with them is mental health services. So it took, I would say, several years of talking about it, meetings, eventually, getting to the point of them filling out the grant application and then us being signed on as one of the official partners. That's a longer standing grant. It's a 5-year grant. I think it's about another year of that program. Another contract that we have is with, I can't say the name of the organization or the tribe, because I don't know if they gave it. There hasn't been really permission to just like share it out that way, but we do have a contract with a tribe in Southern California, and they are looking for the same thing. They're needing mental health services, and those services were not, they couldn't meet the needs within their own organization. So they wanted to contract us. And because we're not also like specifically in their area, that actually worked out, because there was some challenges around not confidentiality, what is that? Dual relationships in their tribal community around service providers. So because we're in LA County and they're in other parts of Southern California, it helped that we are in Los Angeles. So with that contract was the time frame of that was like, I would say about 8 months of conversation around it. How could this be built out? What are their needs? We had a lot of meetings, and eventually we executed an ongoing contract with them. So we're their direct service provider in addition to the other resources that they have within their tribe. And so a lot of that has to do with me having the time to sit and have a lot of conversations and strategize with the organization on what those needs are and how are we able to tailor them on the clients' supports. So as the CEO and having a group practice, I let them, like, my role at this point in my business is that I spend a lot of time on the strategy, on the connections of the different partnerships that we need to have. And the way that I do that is I don't have a full caseload. I have a very small caseload, so it allows me to have those meetings with different stakeholders so that we can move contracts forward. Sometimes the contracts are developed by us. I already have standardized contracts ready to go, and we input the information, they sign, we sign. But usually with these larger contracts, they have their own contracts, and we just make sure that they're meeting our needs and we're meeting their needs, and that everything is legally sound and confidentiality is adhered, and they understand our role in the service, and then we sign and execute contracts. So I know that's a really big answer, but there's a lot of it's always one of those case by case basis kind of situations. But the way I do it is a lot of meetings and learning and understanding of what their needs are, and if we're the best support for them, and being clear about what we cannot support. We do not support emergency mental health services. We support ongoing preventative and maintenance support, but we do not work with so we also are very clear on what we're able to support with and what we're not able to support with around mental health. Because I've been asked that too. Can you be on call 24 hours? Nope, not us. We can't. Our team is not set up that way. Any other last questions? I know we're already past 12, so if you need to hop off, no problem. I will stay on for any additional questions you have, but of course, to reach out to me, there's my phone number. You're welcome to text me. That's my business number. You can call or text me there, social media, my website of the services that I offer. And yeah, just thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for learning together. And I look forward to see how things go for everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much
No problem, Jesus. Have a good day.
too.
Great weekend.